Billionaire woman discovers her long-lost daughter working as a waitress through a pendant she wore. The locket clattered against the diner's worn linoleum floor, its golden surface catching the fluorescent lights. The billion-dollar empire builder and the small-town waitress stared at each other, neither breathing, as 2 decades of secrets began to unravel. What happened next would leave everyone speechless. Drop a comment below and let us know. Have you ever had a moment that changed your entire life in just seconds? And don't forget to like and subscribe to hear what happens next in this incredible story. The late afternoon sun filtered through the streaked windows of Sunnyside Diner, casting long shadows across its faded booths. It wasn't the kind of place where you'd expect to find one of America's wealthiest women. Yet there she sat, her Hermes scarf and tailored suit a stark contrast to the plastic-covered menus and coffee-stained countertops. She hadn't planned to stop here. The board meeting in San Francisco had ended early, and her driver was already mapping the route back to her private jet. But something, perhaps fate, perhaps divine intervention, had made her glance out the window just as they passed the small roadside diner. "Pull over," she had commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. 20 years of building a global empire had taught her to trust her instincts. Those same instincts had kept her searching long after the police had given up, long after her private investigators had exhausted every lead, long after her husband had succumbed to grief and despair. The bell above the door chimed as she entered, its cheerful tone at odds with the weight of memories she carried. Choosing a corner booth, she watched the evening crowd, families sharing plates of fries, truckers cradling cups of coffee, teenagers laughing over milkshakes. Simple moments of joy she had forgotten how to experience. "Coffee, ma'am?" The voice came from behind her, young and warm, carrying a hint of weariness that spoke of long hours on tired feet. As she turned to respond, time seemed to slow, the world narrowing to a single point of focus. A delicate gold chain disappearing beneath a waitress's collar. The same chain that had haunted her dreams for 20 years. The waitress stepped into view, her name tag reading Emma. She couldn't have been more than 25, with honey blonde hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that carried a wisdom beyond her years. But it wasn't her features that made the businesswoman's heart stop. It was the familiar glint of gold against her throat. "Just coffee," the woman managed, her manicured fingers gripping the menu too tightly. Her eyes never left the locket, its delicate floral pattern exactly matching the one she'd carried in her purse every day since the kidnapping. Emma shifted under the intense gaze, unconsciously touching the locket, a gesture she'd developed over years of uncertainty. "Coming right up," she said, turning away quickly. She'd grown used to customers staring, usually at her resemblance to someone they once knew, but this woman's look felt different. It felt like recognition. Behind the counter, Emma's hands trembled slightly as she poured the coffee. The woman's stare had awakened something in her memory. A scent of roses, perhaps, or the ghost of a lullaby she couldn't quite recall. She shook her head, dismissing the thoughts. She'd learned long ago that chasing fragments of memories only led to disappointment. The businesswoman watched Emma's every move, her throat tight with possibility. 20 years of false leads and crushed hopes had taught her to be cautious, but something about this felt different. The way the girl moved, the slight tilt of her head, it was like watching a ghost dance through her memories. Pulling out her phone, she quickly typed a message to her head of security. "Need immediate background check. Waitress named Emma at Sunnyside Diner, Highway 101. Priority, urgent." Her fingers hovered over the send button, then pressed it firmly. She'd learned to trust her instincts in business. Why should this be any different? Emma returned with the coffee, setting it down carefully. "Anything else I can get you?" she asked, already starting to turn away. "That locket," the woman said softly, causing Emma to freeze mid-step. "It's beautiful. May I ask where you got it?" Emma's hand went to her throat again, her fingers wrapping protectively around the small gold pendant. It's the only thing I have from before," she said hesitantly. "From before the foster system." The cup clattered against its saucer as the businesswoman's hand began to shake. "Before," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Would you mind showing it to me?" Emma hesitated, years of protective instincts warring with something deeper, a pull she couldn't explain. The woman's eyes held no threat, only a desperate hope that seemed to mirror the longing Emma had carried her entire life. With trembling fingers, she unclasped the locket. "It doesn't open anymore," she explained softly. "It hasn't since I was little. But the design." She traced the intricate rose pattern with her fingertip, a gesture so familiar it was almost a prayer. The businesswoman reached into her purse with shaking hands, withdrawing an identical locket. The fluorescent lights caught both pendants, throwing twin patterns of light across the worn tabletop. "Mine doesn't open either," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "Not since that day." Emma sank into the booth seat, her legs no longer able to support her. "I don't understand," she said, but her heart was racing with a recognition her mind couldn't yet grasp. "How?" "They were a match set," the woman explained, her composure cracking like thin ice. "I bought them for my daughter's 5th birthday. One for her, one for me. So we'd always be connected, even when apart." A tear slipped down her cheek, carving a path through her perfect makeup. "I never thought apart would mean 20 years. The diner's ambient noise faded away as Emma stared at the matching lockets. Memories she'd buried deep began to surface. The scent of roses in a garden, a warm laugh, someone brushing her hair and singing softly, a birthday party with yellow balloons, a gold locket being fastened around her neck by gentle hands. "My foster records," Emma said, her voice barely audible. "They said I was found in Golden Gate Park. No ID, just this locket." She looked up, meeting the woman's tear-filled eyes. "They estimated I was about 5 years old." The businesswoman nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When she finally found her voice, it carried decades of pain and longing. "It was April 15th, a beautiful spring day. You were playing near the carousel while I answered an important business call." Her hands clenched into fists. "Just 2 minutes. I only looked away for 2 minutes." "The carousel," Emma breathed. In her mind, she could suddenly hear the tinkling music, feel the excitement of watching the painted horses go up and down. There was a red horse, my favorite. "You called him Flame," the woman whispered. "You made me ride him with you every time." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Emma's reality shifted. Her hand found the woman's across the table, an instinctive reach for connection. Their fingers intertwined, and suddenly both lockets began to warm, as if recognizing their reunion. "They told me," Emma said, tears now flowing freely, "that no one was looking for me, that I had been abandoned, all these years." "No." The woman's voice was fierce despite its softness. "I never stopped looking. Not for one day. I hired private investigators, offered rewards. I built my entire company just to have the resources to keep searching." She squeezed Emma's hand. "Every birthday, every Christmas, every single day, I kept hoping, praying, searching." An older couple at a nearby table had stopped eating, watching the scene unfold with tears in their eyes. The elderly woman reached for her husband's hand, squeezing it gently as they witnessed a miracle in their local diner. "I'm Catherine," the businesswoman said softly, still holding Emma's hand. "Catherine Montgomery. But you used to call me Mama." Her voice broke on the last word, decades of loss echoing in those 2 syllables. Emma's free hand went to her mouth, stifling a sob. "I have dreams sometimes," she whispered, "about a garden with roses, a big white house, someone singing 'You Are My Sunshine' while brushing my hair." "Every night before bed," Catherine nodded, tears flowing freely now. "It was our ritual. You wouldn't sleep without it." The diner's manager approached cautiously, concern etched on her weathered face. "Emma, honey, do you need a break?" Emma looked up, her world spinning between past and present. Linda, this is my mother." The words felt foreign on her tongue, yet somehow perfectly right. My real mother. Linda's eyes widened as she looked between them, seeing the resemblance that had been invisible until this moment. The same delicate chin, the same way of tilting their heads when emotional. "Take all the time you need," Linda said softly, patting Emma's shoulder. She'd watched this girl grow from a hard-working teenager into a responsible young woman, always wondering about the sadness that lingered behind her smile. Catherine reached into her purse again, this time pulling out a worn photograph. "This was taken on your 5th birthday," she said, placing it gently on the table. "The day I gave you the locket." Emma stared at the image, a laughing child in a yellow dress sitting on the lap of a younger Catherine. Both wore golden lockets that caught the sunlight. In the background, roses climbed a white trellis. "We were happy," she said wonderingly. "So happy," Catherine agreed, her voice thick with memory. "Your father, James, took this picture. She paused, gathering strength. "He never got over losing you. He spent every day searching, following leads across the country. The guilt of answering that business call instead of watching you that day at the park, it consumed him." "Where is he?" Emma asked, though something in Catherine's eyes already told her the answer. "He passed away 10 years ago," Catherine said gently. "His heart. The doctors said it was a heart attack, but I know it was a broken heart. He loved you so much, Emma, so very much." Emma closed her eyes, grieving for the father she'd never get to know again. When she opened them, determination had replaced the shock in her expression. "Tell me everything," she said. "I need to know who I was, who I am." Catherine nodded, wiping her tears with a manicured hand. "Your name," she said softly, "is Sophia Catherine Montgomery. We called you Sophie. You were born on May 12th at exactly 3:47 in the morning. You came into this world smiling. The nurses said they'd never seen anything like it." As Catherine spoke, painting pictures of a life lost to time, other diners discreetly wiped away tears. The elderly couple who had been watching clasped hands tighter, the wife leaning against her husband's shoulder. The waitresses found excuses to pass by, each adding another tissue to the growing pile on the table. "I was so focused on success back then," Catherine admitted, regret coloring her words. "Building the business, making deals. The call I took that day, I thought it was so important. Funny how 20 years of wealth mean nothing compared to one moment with you. Emma, or Sophie, a name that felt both foreign and familiar, looked around the diner that had been her sanctuary for the past 5 years. The chipped mugs, the regulars who'd become family, Linda who'd given her a chance when she had nothing but determination. "I never had anything fancy," she said slowly. "My foster families. Some were kind, most were just there for the check. I learned to work hard, to depend on myself." Catherine listened, her heart breaking anew with each word. "You shouldn't have had to," she whispered. "You should have had everything." "But then I wouldn't be me," Sophie said with quiet strength. "I wouldn't understand the value of kindness, of earning your way." She gestured to the elderly couple who'd been watching them, now finishing their pie. "Bob and Martha there, they come in every Tuesday. Sometimes they can barely afford their coffee, but they always leave a tip. That's real wealth, isn't it? Having enough in your heart to give even when your pockets are empty." Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes again, but this time they were tears of pride. Her daughter had grown into someone remarkable, not despite her hardships, but perhaps because of them. "I have a home," Catherine said softly. "Your home. I never sold it, never changed your room. The roses still bloom every spring." She paused, watching Sophie's face carefully. "But I understand if that's too much, too fast. We can take this slowly, whatever pace you need." Linda approached their table again, carrying 2 slices of apple pie. "On the house," she said with a warm smile, "some moments need pie." Sophie laughed through her tears, and Catherine felt her heart soar at the sound, so like her own laugh, so like James's. "Thank you, Linda, for everything." "You know," Linda said, looking between them, "I always told Emma, Sophie, that she had the air of someone who came from love. You can't fake that foundation, even when everything else is stripped away." As they shared the pie, Catherine pulled out her phone and quickly canceled her flight. Some business meetings were about to be rescheduled. The world's biggest merger could wait. She had 20 years of memories to rebuild. "Tell me about your life," Catherine said, drinking in every detail of her daughter's face. "Everything. Your hopes, your dreams. What makes you laugh? What makes you cry?" Sophie took a deep breath. "I want to go to college," she admitted. "I've been taking night classes at the community college, studying business, actually." She gave a small laugh. "Guess it runs in the family." "We'll make it happen," Catherine promised, then quickly added, "not as a handout, as an investment in your dreams, whatever they may be." The diner had grown quiet as the dinner rush faded. Through the windows, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Bob and Martha, the elderly couple, stopped by their table on their way out. "You know," Martha said, her eyes twinkling, "I've been coming here for 15 years, been watching this young lady grow into herself, and I always told Bob, didn't I, Bob, that she had angels watching over her." "That you did, dear," Bob smiled, squeezing her hand. "That you did. The angels were your love," Martha said to Catherine. "Never giving up, and your strength," she added, turning to Sophie. "Never losing hope." As the elderly couple left, their own love a testament to time's ability to strengthen bonds, Sophie looked at her mother. "I don't know whether to call you Catherine or Mom," she admitted. "Call me whatever feels right," Catherine said. "We have time now, all the time in the world to figure it out." "There's something else you should know," Sophie said, fidgeting with her locket. "I'm taking business classes because I want to open a place like this someday. A diner where everyone feels like family, where it doesn't matter if you're wearing designer suits or worn-out jeans." She gestured around the warm, welcoming space, a place where miracles can happen over a cup of coffee. Catherine felt her heart swell with pride. Her daughter hadn't just survived, she'd inherited the entrepreneurial spirit and transformed it into something beautiful. "Then, we'll make it happen," she said firmly. "Not with my money, but with my experience. I can teach you everything I know about business, and you can teach me about what really matters." Linda appeared again, this time with a small photo album. "Been keeping this under the counter for years," she said, placing it in front of Sophie. "Pictures of your birthdays here, your high school graduation, little moments. Thought maybe someday someone would want to know about those missing years." Catherine reached for the album with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being there when I couldn't be." As they looked through the photos together, Sophie's life unfolded in snapshots. A teenage girl in a waitress uniform, proudly holding her first paycheck. Emma at her high school graduation, Linda's arm around her shoulders, quiet moments of studying at the counter during slow afternoons. "You know what this means," Sophie said suddenly, looking up at Catherine. "You never have to spend another birthday wondering, and I never have to spend another one pretending I'm not wondering, too." The diner's lights flickered once as if in agreement. Outside, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Time, which had stood still for so long, was beginning to move forward again. "Life's funny sometimes," Linda mused, watching the mother and daughter together. "How the right people find their way back to each other, no matter how many years pass. Makes you believe in something bigger than ourselves." Catherine squeezed her daughter's hand. "When you were little, before everything, you used to say that stars were really angels' flashlights, helping lost people find their way home." Sophie laughed softly, the sound catching on a sob. "Maybe I was right." As the last customers trickled out of the diner, mother and daughter remained, sharing pieces of their separated lives, building bridges across the years that had divided them. They had so much to learn about each other, so much time to make up for, but they had something now that they'd lost 20 years ago. They had hope, and they had each other. "Let's go home," Catherine said finally, standing and gathering her things. Then she paused, uncertain. "I mean, would you like to see your home? The roses are blooming now." Sophie stood too, untying her apron and looking around at the diner one last time. This place had been her shelter, her foundation when she had nothing else. But now it had given her something even more precious. A beginning. "Yes," she said, taking her mother's hand. "Let's go home." As they stepped out into the starlit evening, their matching lockets caught the light from the diner's neon sign, twinkling like promises kept. Some might call it chance that brought Catherine to this small diner on this particular evening. Others might call it fate. But for a mother and daughter reunited after 20 years, it was nothing short of a miracle. Proof that love never gives up, never stops searching, and never forgets its way home. If you were touched by this story of love, hope, and reunion, please leave a comment below. Share your own stories of miracles and never-ending love. Sometimes the most amazing things happen in the most ordinary places, like a small diner on an ordinary evening. Click the screen now to discover another story that will remind you why second chances are the universe's greatest gift. Until next time, keep believing in the power of transformation.